On a bright but chilly morning, in the heart of the city's financial district, where glass towers scratched the sky and luxury cars glided over spotless roads, a little girl with dusty cheeks and tired eyes pushed open the heavy doors of the Grandest Bank. Her name was Arya Nolan. In her small, trembling hands, she clutched a worn-out white bank card the way someone holds the last tiny piece of hope they have left. Sunlight streamed through the towering windows, turning the marble floors into mirrors of gold and white. Men in suits, women in heels, polished shoes, gold watches, everyone looked like they belonged there. Everyone except Arya. Her faded gray shirt was torn at the sleeve. Her jeans were too short, her shoes scuffed and loose. She looked like a shadow that had wandered into a world of light. Heads turned as she stepped inside, some eyes full of curiosity, some with irritation, others with quiet judgment. Arya didn't look back at any of them. She had come for one simple thing. She just wanted to see her balance. If you believe that kindness, second chances, and miracles still exist in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Valley. Your support helps us bring more true and inspiring stories to people who need a little hope. Arya's journey to that bank hadn't started with bravery. It had started with hunger. For 2 long days, she had wandered the city streets with only a few coins in her pocket. She slept wherever she could, on bus stop benches, behind closed shops, under staircases. People passed her by without a glance, or with that quick, uncomfortable look people give when they'd rather pretend they didn't see. Her mother had always told her, long before illness took her away, "Arya, whatever happens, never lose this card. One day it might save you." Back then, Arya hadn't understood. It was just a simple white bank card with her name on it. She didn't know if there was money in the account. She didn't know if her mother had been hoping, or just comforting herself. But on that cold morning, with her stomach aching and her eyes stinging from lack of sleep, Arya decided to find out. Either this card held nothing, or it held the last miracle her mother had left her. Inside Grandest Bank, the air buzzed with a kind of energy Arya had never felt before. Screens along the walls flashed numbers and graphs she couldn't understand. Employees in flawless suits rushed past with coffee cups and leather folders. Phones rang, printers whirred, keyboards clicked. Everything smelled like money, power, and polished wood. And seated in the center of this glittering hive of wealth was Maxwell Grant. Maxwell was not just any banker. He was one of the city's most powerful investment moguls. People knew his face from magazines and business shows. He was the kind of man others tried to impress, tried to imitate, or feared to disappoint. Maxwell was used to winning. Used to control. Used to being the most important person in any room he walked into. He was laughing loudly with his advisors, his booming voice echoing across the marble hall. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed her. A small, thin girl at the far counter, nervously sliding a faded card toward the banker behind the desk. The employee, Elena Rohr, paused mid-sentence when she saw Arya. Her professional smile softened with concern. The people waiting in line behind Arya stared, some frowning, some whispering, a few simply annoyed that someone like her was even inside this bank. Arya's voice was so soft that Elena had to lean in to hear her. I just want to check my balance," Arya whispered. Elena took the card gently. Something about the way Arya held herself, tired but still standing, scared but trying to be brave, made her heart ache. "Of course," Elena said kindly. "Come with me." What Arya didn't know was that her card was old, linked to an account buried deep in the bank's long-term archives. Regular counters couldn't access it fully. The only terminal that could? The one in Maxwell Grant's private section. So Elena led Arya across the gleaming floor. Every step felt heavier than the last. Arya followed, not because she understood what was happening, but because she had to know. She had to know if she had anything left in this world. Maxwell watched them approach with mild amusement. He assumed it was a mistake. Maybe a charity case. Maybe some PR stunt someone had arranged without telling him. The idea that this exhausted, shabbily dressed child had any real business in his corner of the bank seemed absurd to him. He leaned back in his leather chair, exchanging a smirk with one of his advisors. A billionaire, checking the balance of a homeless little girl. It was almost funny. Elena gave him a brief, apologetic nod and quietly explained that Arya's card was linked to an old, special account. Maxwell sighed, still half amused, half annoyed, but he waved them closer. "All right then," he said. "Let's see what we have here." Arya stepped up to the counter, her fingers tightening around the edge as she handed him the card. Her hands were shaking just enough for him to notice. This wasn't a game to her. For Arya, this was everything. She avoided looking at the people behind her. She could feel their eyes. She could feel their judgment. She tried to ignore the heat in her cheeks, the pounding of her heart. Maxwell slid the card into the terminal with a casual flick of his wrist, still wearing that faint, dismissive smile. And then the room seemed to hold its breath. The screen blinked. Numbers loaded. Maxwell's smile disappeared. His eyebrows drew together, his body slowly leaning forward, as if he thought being closer to the screen would make the numbers change. He clicked a few keys. Checked again. No error. His advisor stepped closer. Then another. Then Elena. Their expressions shifted, from boredom, to confusion, to something close to shock. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Maxwell looked at the screen again. The number glared back at him in bright, unforgiving digits. This account wasn't empty. It wasn't low. It wasn't even normal for a person off the street. It was enormous. Years earlier, before any of this, Arya's mother had worked at a small community center. There, she had met a quiet, lonely entrepreneur named Victor Hale. He had no children, no close family left. Age and illness had worn him down, but her kindness had never once failed him. She helped him eat. She read to him. She listened when he needed to talk. Victor had once told her, "The world doesn't reward kindness enough. But I do, in my own way." Without Arya or her mother ever knowing, Victor had gone to Grandest Bank and created a trust fund in Arya Nolan's name. He structured it carefully: investments, interest, long-term growth. The account would grow year after year, untouched, even after his death. He left instructions so that when Arya was old enough, or desperate enough, to finally come looking for it, the bank would find her. Victor had hoped that one day, in her darkest moment, his final act of gratitude would become her greatest lifeline. That day had arrived. Maxwell stared at the balance again. This tiny, hungry, exhausted girl. She was one of the wealthiest individuals he had ever personally served. Richer than many of his private clients. Backed by a trust fund that had quietly multiplied over years, now worth a life-changing fortune. The laughter died in his chest. For the first time in a very long time, Maxwell Grant felt something he wasn't used to feeling: humbled. He looked up at Arya. The girl he had silently mocked a minute ago. The child he had assumed was nothing more than a sad, forgettable case in a city full of them. Now, he saw her differently. Not as a nuisance. Not as a charity project. But as a person of value, dignity, an unbelievable hidden fortune she didn't even know she had. Arya, meanwhile, stared up at him, confused. She couldn't read the number on the screen. It was too big. Too complicated. All she could see was the change in his face. The arrogance was gone. The smirk had vanished. In its place was something new: respect, and maybe even a trace of guilt. Elena crouched down beside Arya, bringing herself to the girl's eye level, her voice soft and warm. "Arya," she said gently, "do you know what this means?" Arya shook her head slowly. Elena took a deep breath and explained in simple words, her mother's friend, Victor. The trust fund. The years of growth. The fact that this account was now worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime. As the truth washed over her, Arya's lips parted. Her eyes filled with tears. All this time, she had walked the streets alone. She had gone hungry, slept cold, afraid, believing she had no one left and nothing to her name. But her mother. Her mother had not left her with nothing. She had left her with a miracle. Security. Hope. A second chance at life. The bank, which had seemed so loud moments before, had gone strangely quiet. People whispered in low voices, glancing between Maxwell and Arya. They had watched him laugh. Now they watched him stand slowly, his whole posture changed. He moved from behind the counter, his tone softening. "Miss Nolan," he said carefully, "you have my word. We will protect what's yours." He offered her a seat. He asked someone to bring her food and water. His advisors, usually cold and efficient, were suddenly gentle, almost protective. Maxwell promised to assign his best team to oversee her account until the courts could appoint a proper guardian. Papers would be filed. Legal protections set. Arya would not be left alone to navigate this. Arya nodded weakly, still stunned. She held on to the bank card like it was a heartbeat in her palm. Sunlight still poured through the high windows. But now, for Arya, the light felt different, warmer, safer, almost like an invisible hand resting on her shoulder, telling her, "You're going to be okay." If this story touched your heart, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Valley. Your engagement helps us spread these powerful stories of hope, kindness, and unexpected miracles to more people who might need them. Before the story ends, tell us in the comments, what would you do if you discovered a miracle when you least expected it? Later that afternoon, Arya stepped out of Grand Crest Bank. The city was still the same, busy streets, tall buildings, rushing strangers. But to her, everything looked different. The wind felt softer on her face. The noise of traffic sounded less frightening and more like a song of possibility. For the first time in years, a small, genuine smile tugged at her lips. She thought of her mother. Of Victor. Of the invisible love that had followed her, even when she thought she was completely alone. The world, Arya realized, could be cruel. It could be cold. But sometimes, hidden in the unlikeliest places, a faded card, an old promise, a forgotten account, were gifts left behind by those who loved us. Gifts powerful enough to change everything. And that day, as Arya walked into the golden daylight, she carried her mother's final gift not just in her hand, but in her heart. Her life would no longer be defined by fear. From that moment on, it would be defined by possibility.